Hey, Slapdog! The Brainiacs are ready.
Welcome into LeatherBrainz. Your host, Slapdog here. And boy, oh boy, Week 17 is in the books. One spot left for grabs in the AFC playoff picture. The Giants won and lost the Shedeur Sanders sweepstakes. We have an epic NFC game this next week for the first seed between the Vikings and the Lions. There's a lot to talk about, gentlemen, but before we talk about any of that, we have to talk about our sponsor, Erica's Healthy Pet. Whether it be cheesy bites, turkey jerky, beef liver chews, sweet potato chips, and so much more. Ladies and gentlemen, if you go to ericashealthypet.com and use code LB20, you're going to get 20% off of your first order. Go ahead, check it out. Please do so and get your loved animal a treat and or topical solutions. Erica's Healthy Pet has it all. And if you go to ericashealthypet.com and use code LB20, you're going to get 20% off. All right, Week 17 review, gentlemen. Ho, ho, hoes. We had Christmas Day games, and it was a good old time. Before we talk about football, I guess, gentlemen, did you have a good Christmas?
Not snowy. We wanted snow. We got no snow.
I'm fine
I
with
like
that,
snowy Christmases.
personally.
God, you're so old.
It was so nice. Here's the thing. I live in a house with a driveway that's like 90 degrees. And when it snows, I fall on my ass 8 or 9 times every time I shovel. And I've avoided that so far this year. So I'm excited.
Well,
Your driveway is pretty bad.
It is
I
pretty
imagine
bad.
shoveling that is not a fun endeavor.
It's so steep I can't use a snowblower because I don't get enough traction with my feet to move up and down the driveway, so I just fall even more. I have to use a shovel and go side to side.
oh my.
Yeah, it's
Fun fact.
My life is terrible.
Fun fact. I almost bought that house, but then your dad stole it from me.
Yeah.
So,
We're
you could've
buying
been
up all the
neighbors.
houses in this neighborhood. You can still live here. You want our spare bedroom? We have 2 spare bedrooms.
No.
You can have one of them.
We've now rooted elsewhere. I'm over it.
I might. Can I have that room?
I don't know.
All right, we'll
I'll
talk
have to
about
think about it.
All right. Well, let's start out with, as our resident Chiefs fans, let's start out with the Chiefs game, gentlemen. The Chiefs win against the Steelers 29-10. Admittedly, I was somewhat surprised by this. I had the Steelers winning this game, to be honest with you. I thought the Steelers defense was going to make Jawan Taylor shit his pants, and I thought kind of did. But I thought that the Steelers defense was really, I mean, the Chiefs offensive line has really struggled all season long, and I thought the Steelers were going to capitalize on that and make it very difficult, and they didn't. So the Chiefs lock up the first seed in the AFC in what appeared to be a fairly convincing fashion, and which the other thing that I found really interesting going to this, like they had 3 games 11 days in a row, or in 11 days, not in a row, but in 11 days they played 3 games, and I'm like, that is really freaking insane.
Annoying. Yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play, so I can't sit here and say it was annoying. And I'm not a Chiefs fan, so I was just bipartisan watching this, but as a bipartisan spectator, I was like, this is what the Chiefs are doing right now is very, very impressive, because that's a lot to ask out of a team to play 3 games in 11 days. Like, that's almost no time to recover. The game planning's got to be really, really difficult. And I mean, the Chiefs looked really good. Mahomes had 320 yards throwing with 3 touchdowns. Kelsey was actually, he played in this game. He had 8 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. And I guess my question to you boys is, are the Chiefs finally starting to figure this out, with the playoff picture starting to unfold in front of us?
Yeah. I'll go back to the 3 games in 11 days. I don't know how much longer the NFL is going to want to do that. I don't think any of these games were particularly interesting, and all 4 of those teams had to do it because they played on whatever it was, the holiday remix. So it was like the Ravens, Steelers, Texans, and Chiefs. They played Saturday and turn around and play Wednesday. And I think you could kind of see it, like each team that won, the Ravens and the Chiefs, pretty convincing. It was just kind of like, all right.
Yeah. Well, they also got lucky that Mahomes was able to get over his ankle injury, because if they imagine the outcry if they plan the schedule like this, 3 games, 11 days, and then the star quarterback of the league gets injured in the first game and misses the next 2 games because they're so close together. Like, people would have been pissed, rightfully so. And I just think the fans of these teams that had to do this are just sitting there like shaking their head. Like, what the fuck are they making us do? Like, we're trying to compete to secure playoff spots, and now we got to play 3 games in 11 days. Like, that's insane. It's insane that that's a thing.
Yeah, this is the part of the season where everybody's mental clock for NFL games gets thrown off, because we're for 15 weeks, 16 weeks, like we're in a cadence. It's like, all right, I got my Thursday games, I got my Sunday games, I got my Sunday night game, and then I got my Monday game. And sometimes they'll make me watch 2 Monday night games, and that's it. And then it's like during the holidays, it's like, oh, here's some games on Wednesday, here's one Thursday,
here's a Saturday game,
one on Friday, here's a bunch of Saturday ones, and then you get to Sunday where you're ready to sit down and like watch all these games, and you're like, there's like 4.
and you're kind of burnt out by this point. Like you're like you're exhausted as a fan on the couch. Because you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta watch more football. It's Sunday.
Yeah, people don't talk enough about that, about how the plight of football fans and how dedicated we have to be to the game. I think we should all get an award for that.
I agree.
Because even if we're not sitting down watching it, like we have our eyes on it. You know what I mean? You're like,
you have to be attentive to it.
Is it on? Is it on? The Christmas one was kind of different as a Chiefs fan. I don't know how you felt, Scotty, but like sitting, like we had, my wife's family over, and they were, talking and doing all this stuff. This is so bad. Her sister called in because they had some news to share with the family, and it was like big news. And here I am with like my niece's boyfriend, and we're watching the Chiefs game on his phone, like huddled in a corner, pretending to like watch everything that's going on. But it's different. Like I think it's weird watching your team on that day, because like you're trying to like be present with the family, and then you're like, oh, that wasn't a hold.
Yeah. Luckily, on actual Christmas Day, we just have that day with my immediate family. We're all Chiefs fans, so we can all kind of rally around the game, which is nice. But it is like, as an irrational fan, as many of our listeners I'm sure are as well, like the potential to ruin Christmas is just so high. Like I'm just trying to be there and enjoy my family, and if the Chiefs lose in some stupid fashion, it's just gonna put me in a bad mood for the rest of the day. And like, you're trying to not be an idiot and enjoy the day with the kids and stuff and be happy, but it's like, it just has so much potential to make the whole day crash and burn, which is sad.
What I'm interested in, like, and everybody has different family dynamics at Christmas time. If I was a Chiefs fan, I would like watching it because. And understand, I don't have kids, right? So that could significantly change how this entire thing plays out when I do have kids. But I would like to watch my team on Christmas, because it's like, what else you open presents, you hang out with the family, you have breakfast, and then like, what do you do after that? You play with your gifts and stuff like that. So there's that weird lull of time where I think that, okay, let's turn on the game and we can all watch the game together, and like, or at least have it on in the background on the TV while everybody's kind of hanging out. So I would prefer to watch my team on Christmas, because there's not a lot to do all day. So, but once again, I don't have kids, so that could.
I will say, if you knew your team was going to win, I would like it.
Yeah,
but if
my
your
team never wins, so I'm not even gonna like.
Team is gonna lose. Well, I think for this one, and we'll get to the game, because the Chiefs had a lot on the line. Like, they win this game, they lock up the 1 seed. So this was like, Scotty and I were getting double presents if they win, because it's like, cool. Now we have like 3 weeks where we don't even have to pay attention to a whole lot, because we're just like, whatever. They're resting. Season starts on January 16th or 17th. But for this game, going back to your question you asked like 5 minutes ago. The Chiefs, I was impressed with how they looked, especially given both teams were kind of like, this was like a mental game, because it was like you said, 3 games in 11 days. As much as it was physical, everybody was feeling it. It was a mental game, and I think the Chiefs look good. Everybody's going to point to how they couldn't score more than 30 points again. They easily could have scored more than 30 points, and I think it's back-to-back weeks with the Texans and the Steelers. I'm slightly encouraged, because it looks like Hollywood Brown might have been that missing piece to this offense, where he's getting those intermediate routes, and he's just a matchup nightmare for a lot of these defenses. And I think for the Steelers, it opened up Kelsey, it opened up Worthy. I think the offense just looked way better with him in there. And so we'll see if this time off hurts or helps
Yeah, Worthy was the big story for me with Hollywood coming back, because that was the question, is they asked Xavier Worthy to step into a way bigger role than he was ever intended to have with all these injuries. And getting Hollywood back and taking some of the pressure off Worthy, we've already seen how much of an impact that's had on his performance. So that's absolutely huge. And we sort of needed to look good in this game because it's crunch time now. And we've seen it over the last couple of years that the Chiefs just aren't as explosive as they used to be, and they kind of have to lean on the defense. And once the playoffs roll around, you see the offense start to click a little bit more, and we're in crunch time now. So it was really nice to see, Kelsey get involved. It was nice to see Worthy have success. It was nice to see Mahomes, not overthrow his receivers 6 times in this game. Like, it really did seem like the Chiefs are kind of coming into form right at the right time.
My favorite part of the game was watching Andy Reid come into the locker room dressed as Santa Claus. That was the best part of the entire thing. And he said, "Your presence, boys, is a first-round bye." So
he actually is Santa. Do you think he doubles as like a Santa, like Bella's?
Yes, he plays the role very well. I'll say that. I do have some questions about the Chiefs and your thoughts here of what the future looks like, and not just this season, but the future for some of the players on the Chiefs team. I mean, Travis Kelce, he had a good game here against the Steelers, but he's been somewhat absent this season, and he's looked like he's significantly slowed down. Is he retire after this year, do you guys think? Regardless of what happens, regardless if the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl or they get knocked out in the second round, whatever the case looks like, is Travis Kelce on the team next year and catching balls from Mahomes?
I would say, Matt, I'd want your percentage. Let's do this in percentages, what we think the likelihood is that he's retiring. I'm going to put mine at like 70% that he retires.
I think I would put mine at closer to 50. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised either way. And for the first time, I do think that the Chiefs would be fine without him. I mean, he obviously plays a big role in big moments, but we see a lot of these other tight ends that are really starting to pick it up. Watson, making big plays in big time situations. Like, I think the Chiefs would be fine without him. So maybe that's why I'm not saying no and just being in denial a little bit. But I do think it's sort of 50-50 because especially if they are, if they win another Super Bowl, it's like, okay, yeah, 3-peat is historic, but what's more historic than 3 is 4. And I could see him wanting to do that. I mean, he just signed a longer contract. Obviously, there's no saying whether or not he's going to stick to that contract, but I could see him sticking around too. So I just don't know. But of course, the flip side to that is he's got a billion things going on now. He's acting. He's got his podcast. Like he's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think he is looking more and more like he's ready to move on to the next chapter of his career.
I would put I know I didn't get a percentage choice here, but I'm going to take one, and I'm going to say it's close at 85% for me. I do think that for everything that you mentioned about what he's got going on after that, I think that there's a pretty good chance that he's done. And, while we're talking about this, we were talking about the Aaron Rodgers Enigma show the other week, and I've gotten further in it. I haven't finished it yet, but I've gotten further in it. And my wife and I are watching it together. And I'm watching it, and I had kind of touched on this. I don't think you were here, Scotty. It might have just been Alan and I when we were talking about this. But if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend everybody goes and watches it, just because I've never liked Aaron Rodgers, and I'm watching this show, and I still think he's kind of a whack job. But I get to watch like the evolution of where he started from and where he is now. Or when he was with the Packers. We really haven't touched on the Jets yet, a little bit, but not a lot. And I watched this, and in some ways, I feel kind of bad for Aaron Rodgers. Like as I start to watch this more, because, and it put the perspective of, and I don't want to ruin the show for you, but he wins the Super Bowl. We all know he wins the Super Bowl with the Packers, and then he goes, then what? He goes, that was like the top for me. Like that was the number one thing I wanted to do in my life. And he goes, and what happens when you achieve the goal that you want to win, or that you want to accomplish the most? Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, that's got to be a tough pill to swallow. And you think about a lot of NFL players, and Jason Kelce had kind of mentioned this on his show as well. Like, your whole identity as an NFL player is wrapped up in who you are, what team you play for, how well you do. Like, all of those things are who you are as a person. And that's what a lot of NFL players have chased their entire life as like, I want to make it to the league. I want to be one of the greats. I want to be something. And it's like, what happens after that? You know, and Jason Kelce had kind of alluded to this. He goes, I feel like I've lost part of my identity a little bit. And so that's kind of sad to see for a lot of NFL players.
Yep.
But for Travis Kelce, and I know this was a very long rant, but Travis Kelce, like, he's got a lot of things going on aside from the NFL now. So I think that almost makes it easier of a transition for him to say, hey, I did everything I needed to do in the NFL, and I still have a lot of things I want to accomplish aside from sports. Yeah. So I think there is a really good chance that he's not on the team next year.
Yeah, it'll be sad. No. I mean, whether it's this year or next year, it's obviously inevitable, and it's coming sooner rather than later. It'll be sad, but like I said, I am more optimistic now than ever before that the Chiefs will be fine without him and can still continue to win even without Travis Kelce, one of, if not the greatest tight end of all time. So
yeah, you know, and I think this is the part of it as fans that happens with these players, and whether it's Aaron Rodgers, whether it's, you know, Kelce, whether it's whomever is going to be retiring, you know, coming up. It's such a small window that it all happens in. You know, we talk about this career, you know, like career for the rest of the free world is like, you know, 20, 30 years. Like I had this career, but for them, it's like, you know, 10 is like a long career in the NFL, and, you know, 12, 15 is sometimes, you know, Hall of Fame territory. And so it's, for as much as it's like, oh my gosh, they've been around for a long time, you know, it does go quick for them, but it is such a whirlwind. And I remember when the Chiefs drafted Kelce, and listening to the practice reports, and he tore his ACL his rookie year and then sat out and didn't get to see him for a while. So it was like, it's weird seeing this side of things and then seeing how much older he is and how quickly the body shuts down. That's a small window, man, for where their bodies are like optimum, because he is slower. Like he's not breaking away from anybody like he used to, because they used to run those bubble screens for him all the time, and he would break it like 30, 40 yards. Nobody could catch him. And now it's like he's just a big guy that catches the ball and falls down. So I think I would agree. I think Scotty and I are probably on the wrong side of this because we are fans and we want to see him keep playing. But I think if they would have lost the Super Bowl last year, I think he would have retired then. I think he would have called it then. And so I think this year you can kind of see it's just weighing on him. You can just, I mean, he's just slow. It's tough. So that part of it sucks. I know we have coming up after this game, though, next week, if we look ahead, this Chiefs game. So they're going to be sitting all of them. You talk about being old. It looks like the Chiefs are going to sit a lot of their starters going into week 18 against the Broncos, which the Broncos are in a must win, which means all these scenarios, whether you're a Broncos fan, you're a Bengals fan, or you're a Dolphins fan, all hang on the performance of one Carson Wentz.
Hilarious.
You mean Super Bowl winning Carson Wentz?
Kind of.
Former Super Bowl winner Carson Wentz?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very funny.
That is really funny. And I just love to watch the world burn. So I'm just sitting here just enjoying this, and I'm like, this is going to be fun no matter what. I don't expect the Chiefs to win, but by golly, it would be hilarious.
How fucking funny would it be if the Broncos were kept out of the playoffs because they lost to all the second stringers for the division rival? Like that would be the greatest situation of all time. I would love that so much.
I want that so bad.
So do I
want that so bad.
Screw you, Sean Payton.
Hilarious.
All right. Let's pivot over and talk about the Ravens and the Texans and the lack thereof of a football game, because the Ravens absolutely demolished the Texans here 31-2. This game was really boring for me, to be completely honest. But what I think we need to talk about here is the MVP talk, because there's a lot of talk about Josh Allen. There's a lot of talk about Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson definitely put on a show in this game and tried to make his case as to why he should be the MVP. But if you gentlemen, if you both had a vote right now, who is your MVP favorite right now? Would it be Josh or Lamar, or would it be Jared Goff, or is there another player that comes to mind? Scotty, you're shaking your head no. What are you thinking?
I don't know. This is kind of a complicated one. For me, Josh Allen's going to win the MVP. It's hard to imagine a scenario where that doesn't happen, but you can make such a good case for Joe Burrow. And we're going to talk about that more in a minute when we talk about the Bengals game. But you look at what Joe Burrow has been forced to do by virtue of this roster and this organization that just has not helped him at all. And granted, he's got a ton of weapons on offense, like, don't get me wrong. But like, he has been playing at a ridiculous level and has basically single-handedly kept the Bengals, with some semblance of hope to make the playoffs. So, obviously, he's not going to win it. The team's not good enough. It is what it is. But I think you can make a really strong case for him. A lot of people say Jared Goff, and I just think that one game where he threw 5 interceptions, that alone eliminates him. Like, you compare that one performance to Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and it's not even close.
I would sub out Goff from this conversation and put Darnold.
Yeah.
If you're just going off statistics, and what they've done, I would put Darnold in there over Goff. Just kind of what they've done and where this team's gone. For me, the MVP talk gets tough because this is much like we saw with the Heisman Trophy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of dissent around football around who is more deserving, who is more impactful, because from a statistical standpoint, Travis Hunter didn't really do anything to warrant being the best player in the country. But from an impact standpoint, you're like, okay, my eyes tell me what he's doing is spectacular, and he's really good football player, and he looks like the best football player. And I think for the NFL, some of that is ringing true here because statistically, Lamar Jackson is better than Josh Allen is in just about every category except for rushing touchdowns, which people will give him the Jalen Hurts treatment and say a lot of those are 1-yard sneaks. So what are we really talking about? And I think for me, it's just like, what is the criteria for MVP? Because what is most valuable to you may not be most valuable to me. Is it most valuable to the league, which is what I think it is? I think some people think most valuable to their team because you get on Twitter or X.
That's how I think about it.
What if you took them off the team or they split it? And I think that's the problem is I don't think we have an agreed upon criteria of what the MVP is. So this gets very convoluted because some people will point to stats, which last year Lamar Jackson won it and he wasn't top 10 in passing or anything. He just looked good. And so I think Bills fans are hanging their hat on that this year, being like, hey, look how good he looks. Like, look what he's doing with the team that a lot of people felt like was going to barely make the playoffs or maybe miss the playoffs even. And they were firmly in the playoffs, even in the 1 seed discussion for a long time. And so I think that's what makes this tough is everybody has different criteria. And so it's hard to get on common ground.
So what would your criteria be?
I think for me, some of it has to be statistical. I think some of it has to be like this. Look what he's done for his team. I think team success does have to play into it somewhat, even though it may not be necessarily quote unquote their fault. Like in Joe Burrow's case, I think what Joe Burrow's doing is something we saw Mahomes do a few years back, where his defense was like bottom 5 of the league, and he threw for like 55 touchdowns. Like you kind of have to do that if you're going to win. And I think. And that's part of, and we'll talk about Joe Burrow here in a second, but I think some of the statistical things he's doing is out of like necessity, and he's doing it. And I think there's a lot to be commended there. But like the flip side of that is if the Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson shouldn't be punished because they were winning and had to sit on the football to win the game. You know what I mean? Like I think there's nuances to it all. I think for me, my vote, and I said it at the beginning of the season, and I'm going to sit on it now. I still think Josh Allen should be the MVP of this league. I think what he's done to this team, the games he's won, how it's looked, he's kept him in it. He's throwing to people like, Keon Coleman's kind of there, not doing anything. He's throwing to Mac Hollis. His tight end room's been in and out. I think the one thing, if you're going to say is like an asterisk, is I think Josh Allen has probably the best offensive line in football. I think that running game is unreal. They get like 7 or 8 yards a carry, which makes life a whole hell of a lot easier. So that's not his fault either. But my vote would go Josh Allen right now.
Yeah. Okay. You agree with that, Scotty?
Yeah.
Okay. I tend to as well. I think for me, if I had to pick 1, 2, 3, it would be Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. Because when I look at MVP, and I agree with you, Alan, I think that what you said as far as like MVP to you might be different looking than how I categorize MVP. I look at MVP as if you were to take the player off the team, what would that look like, right? And that's why Joe Burrow is definitely front of mind for me as somebody like if you took Joe Burrow off the Bengals, we might be talking about them having the first pick in this upcoming draft. They're that bad. And Joe Burrow has single-handedly, and I don't want to say single-handedly, but played a large majority in the reason why the Bengals are even potentially in the playoff contention like we're talking about here. Otherwise, they'd be ass. They'd be terrible. So Joe Burrow, he's playing insane football. And statistically, he's got the numbers to back it up. But like Scotty said, I think it makes it a very hard case to sit here and say, Joe Burrow deserves MVP when you look at the rest of the season. Same thing for Josh Allen.
Play out that way? Do we think that'll
mean?
play out? Like, are we all kind of in agreement? We think Josh Allen's gonna win this one, right?
I think so. So. But like the Bengals beat the Broncos. We'll pivot over to the Bengals game here since we're talking about Joe Burrow in this MVP race. The Bengals win this game 30-24. This game was insane. This game looked like a game that nobody wanted to win necessarily, and it was back and forth and back and forth. Joe Burrow threw for 412 yards and 3 touchdowns. T. Higgins with 131 yards and 3 touchdowns. Bo Nix looked really good, actually. I mean, he had 219 for 3 touchdowns and an interception. This game had playoffs written all over it. Like, it was a fun game to watch. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I was screaming. Granted, I don't give a shit about either of these teams, and I'm like, this is a good football game. It was really great. It was a battle to the death, and the Bengals ended up winning this one, which if they wouldn't have won this one, they would have been out, right? And there were a couple boneheaded moves that I thought when watching this game from a coaching perspective. I was like, for Denver, there were a couple times where I was like, just run the ball and run the clock out, because even if you tie, you still, like, the Bengals are out and you're still in. So, like, who cares if you're going to put points up on the board? Just run the ball, run the clock out, and just take the tie and move on. And they didn't do that at the end of that game. And I thought that was a huge coaching error from Sean Payton. Screw you. But aside from that, like, the game was really, really fun. So now, you look at the future here of what this is going to look like. Denver has to beat KC, like we mentioned, for them to still be in it. And what would you guys like to see play out here? Do you want, obviously, the Chiefs to win against the Broncos, I'm assuming?
Well, this is actually kind of a fun question, because I think the funniest scenario would be the Broncos lose to the Chiefs' second string. That would be very funny. But when I think about how the playoffs could shake out, I honestly think the Bengals getting into the playoffs and having to play the Bills is like best case scenario for Chiefs fans. Because if the Bengals end up beating the Bills in some crazy shootout, like, I don't know if I might be speaking for everybody, but you can correct me, Alan. At this point, I would much rather play the Bengals than the Bills. And I think that the Bengals would give the Bills a fun game. I think we'd see a shootout, and it's possible that Joe Burrow could pull that out against a Bills defense that's kind of middle of the pack. So I would rather play the Bengals than the Bills. So part of me is kind of rooting for the Bengals to pull out this bullshit and make it to the playoffs, just, for the possibility of that to happen for Chiefs fans.
Yeah, the one wrinkle is if Miami wins and the Denver loses, then Miami goes in. So the Bengals need 2 things to happen for them to get in.
I want the Bengals to go in.
I want the Bengals too, and I think for a lot of the same reasons Scotty did. I think if you're looking like an objective fan standpoint, and obviously we're going to look at it from like as a 1-seed perspective, but like as a fan of the NFL, I think Joe Burrow being in the playoffs and going on the road to play Josh Allen, that's nightmare fuel if you're a Bills fan. Because here you are, we got the 2 seed. This should all be fine. Who are we going to play? We're going to play the Dolphins. Cool, they suck. Denver, we can beat them. And then you're like, wait, the Bengals have a chance to get in here and derail everything.
So cool.
I almost want to see that game because the fever pitch of that game of like, if the Bills lose that game to the Bengals, the amount of like hand wringing and like, what are we doing?
Sean McDermott, in the event that this plays out and that situation comes to fruition where the Bills lose against the Bengals, is Sean McDermott out as a head coach?
You know my answer. My canned answer depends on how it looks.
Yeah.
Depends on how it looks. I think he would be back on the hot seat. I think right now he's fine, right? Because he's got it all figured out. But isn't it funny? Like, weird scenario. You get the Bengals in there, and then the Bengals do it. I don't think the Bengals can beat the Bills because their defense is that bad. I think Josh Allen would have a field day with them. But it would be fun to watch, and just to see the Bills sweat a little bit, that divisional round would be worth it. I think from a fan, if you're a fan of the Chiefs, the scenario you want is the Broncos win or the Dolphins win, one of the two, because you want the road to be the easiest it can. And if you have to play right now, the way that it sets up is you are going to play either the Bills or the Ravens in the AFC title game. And then outside of that, you're going to play the Steelers or the Texans maybe. And you're kind of like, whatever, we've been there, done that. We could probably do that again at home. It would be a little different scenario if you had to play the Bengals and then the Bills or the Ravens to get into the Super Bowl. I think that would be it's a little more sweaty but I don't think the Chiefs are worried about it at all. I think the Bills are the only one that's kind of a matchup nightmare. I think they like their matchups with the other two teams, just a little better.
But that's kind of what my point is I think as Chiefs fans, the best case scenario is the Bills lose before they get to us. And so I think the best chance for that to happen is the Bengals. And I think the Bills would beat any of these teams, including the Bengals, but I think the Bengals would give them the hardest matchup, or at least the scariest matchup to deal with. So if we end up having to play the Bengals, I think that would be best case scenario. Otherwise, right now it seems obviously playoff football, anything can happen, but the most likely scenario, if anyone else gets in, is it's the Bills.
Yeah,
and that's terrifying.
This is going to be fun watching, I think, as a fan on Sunday, because you're like, ooh, everybody's rooting for different reasons. The Bengals will have already played, so they'll know, because they can't lose that last game either. Like they still got a game to win overall. In the Broncos, I want to go back to this game for just a quick second as we're talking about all the playoff talk. Bo Nix, one sneaky thing that I was reading about this game, and I was listening to it on the radio. Actually, I had it on my phone, but I was listening to it. I wasn't watching it and driving. But Bo Nix, that touchdown pass that he threw, I think it was to Mims. It was like some 50-yarder, 60-yard pass. It was actually the longest pass, like air yardage in the NFL this year. And I was like, that seems wild to me. Of all of all these cannons out here, and Bo Nix certainly has a cannon. I'm like, I obviously don't like the Broncos, and I wish nothing but the worst for everybody in Denver. But it is interesting how this is playing out for them, and it looks like they might be cooking with a little bit of grease here with Bo Nix.
He looks good, man.
It's not just Bo Nix though, and I'm glad you brought this up. Like, this whole rookie quarterback class looks. A large majority of them look really good. Like, Bo Nix is playing really, really good football. You have Jaden Daniels, of course, and then Drake May's playing really great football. Michael Penix, question marks all around him, but I mean, like, he's now playing. Like, this quarterback class is not doing bad.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams really hasn't played terrible. I mean, the Bears aren't great, but like,
he's not bad.
He's not a bad quarterback. And so you look at this and it's like, is this another like a group of quarterbacks where it's like, okay, the NFL's in good hands? Like, that could be this conversation in the next 2 to 3 years where we're looking at all these quarterbacks and we're like, that quarterback class was really, really good.
Yeah. It could be all of them. If you're a Vikings front office, do you think the law of averages plays in? You're like, no way. No way our quarterback is also good, right? Like, one of these quarterbacks has to be bad. Could it be ours? I don't know. I think that's the wrinkle. It's like, well, what JJ McCarthy ends up being. But I don't know if he's like, I don't know.
You mentioned JJ McCarthy. I just like to state to every single person, if you're tuning into the show at this exact moment, you should tune into this show every single week, because we are fucking smart. We are some smart motherfuckers, and we're always ahead of these slow-ass NFL or ESPN reporters to any story. And I'm talking about JJ McCarthy. So the Vikings win this game 27-25 against the Packers. And, we've talked about Sam Darnold, and we've talked about how is Sam Darnold going to be on the Vikings next year? This has been a conversation that we've had for the last few weeks, and now it's really starting to heat up with the national media. It's finally caught. I don't know if they just realized he was on a one-year deal. I don't know where they've been, but we've been kind of having this conversation over and over again here, and we're going to have it again this week because it's starting to have, like I said, heat up with the national media. So, after the Vikings win this game, the Vikings, I don't know if you saw the locker room for the Vikings, but it went absolutely ballistic when Sam Darnold walked in. The entire team was just throwing water and screaming for Sam Darnold, and they put Sam Darnold on their shoulders in the locker room and were like chanting for him. So he definitely has the locker room buy-in, but are we still of the mindset that Sam Darnold is going to not be a Viking after this season? Because he's starting to, we said like, no, there's no chance, right? And now, are we walking back from that statement and looking at this and being like, there is a chance that Sam Darnold could be a Viking quarterback next year?
Well, what really gets me is still the cost of his contract. Like, I don't know where teams are going to value this guy, because obviously with the beginning of his career was disappointing, but he played on nothing but shit offenses and was a backup. Like we're seeing him now in a situation, as I said at the beginning of the season, that I think a lot of quarterbacks could succeed in. So the question is, quarterback needy teams, if Sam Darnold hits free agency, like, what would they be willing to pay for Sam Darnold as the quarterback? And are the Vikings willing to match? And that, I think, is still largely up in the air. And I really think, in a perfect world, yeah, the Vikings would keep him because he's playing great. They already know, he's good to go. They're going to let JJ, once he's healthy, he's going to be able to get legitimate practice reps and learn under a guy who's having current success. And like, that's a pretty good situation to be in if you're the Vikings. It all comes down to the price of the contract. And I still think that's up in the air. Like, I don't know what teams are going to be willing to pay for this guy because I'm still not sure anyone really knows how to evaluate Sam Darnold as a talent.
Yeah, I think this is a great question, Slaps. I think if they win next Sunday against Detroit and they lock up the 1 seed, I think they're going to have to pay him and keep him. And it's going to have to be like a $100 million contract. Like, it's going to have to be something. And this is where this gets interesting.
Insane.
Because it's almost like the 49ers when they drafted Trey Lance and they're like, wait, we actually have a different quarterback, and obviously we don't know anything about JJ McCarthy, like he's untested, unproven, but he's on a rookie deal. Like, if you're going to do it and you can do it and you can afford it, it's like this is kind of the time you can do it. The only other team I think that would be willing to, and this is dependent on a few other dominoes, is if Stafford actually retires, which they've been hinting at for a few years now that he's going to retire. And McVay and O'Connell are of the same cloth. He's a disciple, McVay, and I think it would be a good landing spot as like a Band-Aid bridge for the Rams because they're not in any position to necessarily draft and develop a quarterback, but it could be a good bridge in putting Darnold in a situation. Obviously, if he's in the right situation, he can perform. In this game, it wasn't like it was screen passes going for 75 yards, and that's why he was he was throwing some dots. Like he looked confident, and we talk about this all year. We've talked about this for how many years? It's all about the situation. It's all about the situation. It's all about the situation. And it's like, O'Connell may be a quarterback whisperer. We'll see. It looks like it, but I think if there's like a landing spot that makes sense for Darnold, if it isn't with the Vikings, if the Vikings say, you know what, we got to build up our team elsewhere, and we got to see what we have in McCarthy. I think the Rams would be an interesting spot for him to land.
I like that
outside of the other quarterback needy teams, but I think the Rams would be interesting.
The Rams would be fun, and McVay's even kind of. There's been some murmurs that he might retire, like he might be done, and that would suck because I would be happy as a Cardinals fan, but as an NFL fan, like I would rather him be in the league because it's that much more fun with him in it.
He's going to take over for Andy Reid.
I hope not. I mean, I kind of do because I want him out of my division, but I don't know. I think there's a couple things at play for me here. I go back and forth on it. Largely, I do think no. I think Sam Darnold, they will move on from him because I do think Kevin O'Connell is that great of a head coach and that quarterback whisperer to be able to just move on. Like, you look at Kirk Cousins, and like when they moved on from Kirk Cousins, I was like, this is a problem. Like, this is a really big problem for the Vikings because Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He's been largely successful with the Vikings, and now you're moving on, and it's like, this could get really bad, especially because you have someone of the caliber of Justin Jefferson. And it's like, if you can't get somebody that can effectively get him the ball, you're going to be in a really bad spot as a team. And to start out this season, we all had the Vikings at the bottom of the division or very close to it. And so we see where they're at now and we see what's going on. And we're like, we definitely whiffed on that one.
I think that's the other thing of this coaching job that O'Connell's done is the beginning of the season, you had McCarthy go out. They had a cornerback die. They had another cornerback go out for the year. It's like, everybody was like, this is awful. What an awful start. They haven't even done anything yet. The one thing, the sneaky MVP of this Vikings team, just like with the Bills, is their offensive line is insane. Darnold had 8 years to throw, and that does wonders for any quarterback if you know, hey, likelihood of me getting sacked is fairly low. Like, I can go through my progressions here and deliver a good football. And I think if the Vikings do move on, if you're a Vikings fan, if they do move on from Darnold, what are they going to do with that money? I think you just keep investing in the O-line. You keep investing in your D-line. Like, you just keep putting it in those spots. Obviously, you want to retain your wide receiver talent. But I think we were even talking at the beginning of the season, like, does Jefferson demand a trade? Like, where is this team going? This could be awful. And then you fast forward to now, it's like, well, they're one game away from being the 1 seed and they're in the playoffs, and look how many games they've won, and they look good doing it. And so this is I think Kevin O'Connell, in my opinion, should be coach of the year. I don't think he's going to win it. I don't know. I obviously don't know that race, but I think he should be the coach of the year, just given what was in front of the Vikings, the division they're in, and just where they're at. And I think if they lock up this 1 seed, I think it's going to be hard to move on from Darnold, but then I think that also locks up coach of the year for him.
I don't know if they should move on from Sam Darnold, though. As much as I would like them to for selfish reasons, like I look at the landscape of what this could look like. If they move on from Sam Darnold, because look, we've been, like I mentioned, we've been having this conversation. We're going to continue to have this conversation. And now all NFL talking heads are starting to have this conversation. So this is going to be a conversation that is like all eclipsing for all NFL fans, right? You look at the situation here. Let's say they do move on from Sam Darnold, right? Which is definitely on the table right now. They move on from Sam Darnold. JJ's the guy. And JJ comes out next year, and by week 4, he's looking subpar at best. Now all of Vikings fans are coming for the head of Kevin O'Connell. They're coming for the head of the GM for the Vikings and say, why did you not keep Sam Darnold? You had a guy who was a dude. And so the risk of burning your fan base and really upsetting them in the event that like JJ doesn't work out the way that Sam Darnold has been, that's a high risk, high reward thing. Now, if JJ comes out and he looks great, then NFL fans are going to be like, oh yeah, we're fine. Like y'all are keep killing it. Like this was the best move ever. And I feel as if that's a lot of pressure to put on a quarterback who's never taken an NFL snap before, because he's, for all intents and purposes, he's going to come in and he's essentially a rookie quarterback. Yeah. And yes, he's had time to be able to learn and sit in the rooms and kind of figure out how things are playing out, but that doesn't mean you've actually played live snaps before. So you put him in that situation and he's, for like I mentioned, you get down to brass tacks, he's pretty much a rookie. That's a lot to put on somebody.
I think the question is, do you trust Kevin O'Connell to make that decision?
Well,
is it his decision to make?
It's more than Kevin O'Connell, because so. at this point, if you're a Vikings fan, like this is might be enough to make you nervous, but you can kind of kick your feet up and say, this front office hasn't done anything in recent history to make me not trust their judgment. I mean, every move that they've made has been successful, whether it was getting Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and trading for TJ Hawkinson and then getting rid of Kirk Cousins and getting Sam Darnold. Like, it's all just worked out. So at this point in time, if you're a Vikings fan, you can say, I don't know what's going to happen. It makes me kind of nervous, but at least I can have faith in this front office and this coaching staff to make the right decision and put us in the best possible situation to win. So you have to feel a little bit of a sense of relief just knowing how good the front office has been in recent years.
Not to always bring it back to the Chiefs. I'm sorry. Slaps, I know you're going to hate this, but I'm going to. But this is eerily similar when Alex Smith, and they moved on from Alex Smith and they won a playoff game and the Chiefs looked really good and they had this young rookie quarterback drafted at 11 or whatever in Pat Mahomes, and nobody knew anything. And you're like, all right, well, we're going to trade away Alex Smith and see how this goes. And I think, it's the trust. Do you trust and when I say Kevin O'Connell, because it would be like in that situation, do you trust what Andy Reid is telling the front office? Because obviously the front office isn't at every practice evaluating like the coaches are. So if they do it and they say JJ McCarthy's our guy, then what you have to trust is that what Kevin O'Connell is seeing in practice from JJ McCarthy is worth it. Like, he's seeing it. Like, he's like, yeah, we're good. I got this. And so I think that's what it's going to come down to. But it's definitely a risk, but we'll see how this plays out. But I think if they get that 1 seed, it's definitely going to look a little different. That discussion is going to look a little interesting heading into the offseason.
It's going to be a conversation that we continue to have. I mean, like, this is an ever-changing conversation, I think. And, going back to one of Alan's favorite adages, it's going to be, what does it look like? And
if it looks like it did in this Packers game, it looks pretty fucking good.
It does.
I mean, this was a tough game. These are two very, very good teams, and Sam Darnold played really, really, really good football. Like, this is a legitimate, Super Bowl contender.
To put a bow on this, I'm going to ask one more Sam Darnold question. No matter what team, will Sam Darnold be a starting quarterback in the NFL next year? Maybe not for the Vikings. Okay. I agree with that. I think, which is kind of interesting because his story is kind of Baker Mayfield-esque in some ways, where he's just kind of homie-hopped around between a bunch of different NFL teams, and then he found a team that took him in, and he's been doing really well. So he's definitely got to finally showcase that he has some talent that otherwise the Jets ruined him for. So let's go over and talk about the NFC West. The Rams clinched the NFC West after they beat the Cardinals 13-9. Cool. The Rams are going to win this game. I knew that going into this game. Admittedly, I had the Rams actually winning by more than 13-9 because I thought the Rams are going to come in and just smoke the Cardinals.
That brings up an interesting point because this offense, we've seen them look awesome when they're healthy, and now for a few games in a row, it's like Puka's awesome, but everyone else is kind of hit and miss, including Matthew Stafford over the last few weeks. I mean, in this game, he went 17 for 32 for 189 yards and 0 touchdowns, and that's been kind of standard over the last few weeks with Matthew Stafford. So it's an interesting question because when this team is clicking, they seem like their offense can compete with anybody. But recently, it's like, okay, we see, Matthew Stafford's getting kind of old, Cooper Kupp's kind of old, Puka's awesome, but it's like, can they rely on him to get 200 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns every game? I don't know. So I don't know how this team stacks up in the playoffs. Like, is this a team that can win a couple rounds in the playoffs or not? I don't know. It depends on how it looks.
I still think so. I think that we said this a couple weeks ago, and I still stand by that. The Rams are the team that nobody wants to play right now. I understand that, yes, this wasn't a pretty game for Stafford, and yes, this was a lot closer than I think a lot of people had this game actually being, Vegas aside. But yeah, no, the Rams are a team. I'm a Cardinals fan. I don't have anything like it. If I was a fan of another team and I had to come across the Rams in the playoffs, you bet your ass I am scared. Because the Rams are a well-coached team. They're a very good team. They have talent in a lot of different places, and they're just scary. They're a scary team.
Yeah.
My viewpoint on the Rams has not changed whatsoever, and now with them clinching the NFC West and them going to the playoffs, whoever plays them in the first round, I would be absolutely terrified. Are they? Can you beat the Rams? Sure, but is it going to be an easy game? Absolutely not.
Well,
and if the margin for error is a lot smaller than I think a lot of people realize.
Yeah, right now if everything's locked in, they get the Commanders in the first round,
and I think there's a pretty decent
Rams
chance
are going
can win.
Oh yeah, and Rams are going in as the 3 seed, so it's not like they're slouching. They're in there. They're in there at a good seed, and then if they win that game, then it's either like they're probably going to get Philly if Philly wins.
Another fun game.
Philly, probably. And I think it's interesting for them. The offense being absent since that Bills game, because they put up like 40 some odd points against the Bills that have been like struggling to get over like 15 or 10 is quite interesting. And so I don't know. It's what offense shows up, I think, is largely going to dictate it, because I think it's going to be a shootout when they play in that first round. If it is them and Jaden Daniels, they're definitely going to have to put up some points.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. If that happens, that would be awesome. You mentioned the Eagles. The Eagles, they smoked the Cowboys. They didn't smoke the Cowboys. They laid the Cowboys down on the ground and took a massive, dirty, nasty poop on them, because this score was 41-7. Saquon Barkley has officially reached over 2,000 rushing yards in just 16 games, leaving him only 101 yards short of Eric Dickerson's NFL record. Saquon was even asked about this. He was asked after the game. He goes, "Hey, are you aware of this? And like, is this on your mind going into next week?" And Saquon said, "Yeah, I'm aware of it, but he's like, I have higher aspirations than breaking that record." He goes, I came to this team because I want to win a Super Bowl and I want to go all the way. So while I'm aware of that record, I really don't care about it nearly as much as I do as winning the Super Bowl. And I'm like, okay, shut the hell up. Like, go, like that is a record that like will go down in history for a very, very long time. Like, you care about that. Don't sit here and hold yourself as high and mighty as to say, no, I'm not. It is what it is. Like, you want to win that fucking thing, but also there's a pretty good chance that you could. Like, you are killing it. So, do the Eagles play Saquon?
The Giants.
Do they play Saquon next week?
Maybe for like a few series to see how lathered up he gets. Like, if he plays a few series and he gets like 40 some yards, I think they kind of let him ride it out. But if he plays a few series and maybe has like 10 yards and they're not moving the ball, I think maybe they sit him. I think they're just going to see how it plays out. I was going to say really quickly that this, coupled with the Giants win, the Giants are just getting memed into oblivion right now, because the Giants winning took them out of the one, and then everything from Hard Knocks is coming back, and it's like, surely we don't trade away, or surely we don't let Barkley walk to our rival and he rushes for 2,000 yards, right? Like, this is a rough week for the Giants. Even though the Giants weren't really doing anything, they still somehow lost, even though they won. It's like, what a rough little week for them. I don't think the Eagles are smart. they're as much as they're going to want to get the record, and Saquon's going to, I think they're going to dip their toe in the water to see how warm it is before they roll him out there for a full game.
I agree. I think that's probably what they do. It's just, let me just put this like disaster level scenario on you.
No.
Sirianni right now, he's been on and off the hot seat for like as long as I can remember, but right now he seems like he's doing fine. The Eagles look like a dominant team. Eagles fans I think are bought back in on Sirianni to a large degree. But let's say he's like, all right, we're going to let Saquon try and go for this record. Even if it's, we give him 10 carries in the first half and just see where he's at. And then imagine, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, but imagine an injury happens. Is Sirianni immediately back on the hot seat for that decision alone?
No. I don't think so. Because there's a couple things at play here. Saquon, regardless of what he says to the media, you know damn well he cares. Like, how do you not care? Like, as somebody who plays in the NFL and is as competitive as he is, there's absolutely zero chance that he does not care, right? So, like, for me, if I was looking at this situation, if I was Saquon Barkley, I'd say, put me out there. I want to win. I want that record. Like, how do you not? Like, you have to have some sort of ego if you're going to be that competitive, right? And these players are. So, yeah, he's going to want to go out there and break that record. However, if Sirianni, like, let's say that situation comes to fruition, like, yeah, Sirianni carries some of the blame, but I'd also just blame Saquon as well. Like, because Saquon could go to him and be like, hey, I don't care. Like, don't play me. Like, this doesn't matter. But I don't think so. I don't think Sirianni would take the blame for that. I mean, yes, a little bit of it, but not enough for. And I'm not an Eagles fan, so perhaps asking an Eagles fan would be a better question than asking us. But
I could just imagine an Eagles fan just being so irrationally furious with Sirianni.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think Sirianni's going to be on the hot seat. I think an Eagles fan might just straight up murder him.
Yeah,
and then
just burn his house down.
Yeah, but like Eagles fans want Saquon to go break that record too. Like, they're like, if you're an Eagles fan and you were that close and like that was your guy, you're like, yeah, put him out there so he can get that record. Like, if I was an Eagles fan, that's what I would want.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see both sides of this. And that's where I think maybe you tear out on, like, you kind of give him a pass because it's 50-50. Like, obviously you want him to get the record for him personally because that's like immortality. Yeah. You know what I mean? But then on the other side, it's like, well, we also are trying to win a Super Bowl and we're the 2 seed and we think the NFC is gettable and let's not ruin our chances of getting to the Super Bowl by
I like your theory of testing the water. I think I like that. I think
I honestly think true. They give him a few series. If he's getting like 6-7 yards a carry and it looks like they might be able to get it pretty quick, I think they'll just feed him and get it and then get him out the door. But I think if it's tough sledding and he's like, they're stuffing him at the line of scrimmage and it's like, he's taking some shots, I think they pull it and just say, no,
well,
not today.
The other layer to this is the offensive line, because obviously the Eagles have a great offensive line. They've got some stars. Are they going to play? Because do you want is Saquon going to rush for over 100 yards behind a backup offensive line? I don't know. But so do you put all of them out there and take the risk for all of them for a few series? Like, how do you deal with it? It's a very confusing situation. And then you add on to that, it seems like a foregone conclusion that the NFL is going to get rid of some preseason games and add an extra regular season week.
Yeah.
So how long is this record even going to hold up, even if he gets it, if you're giving running backs a whole nother game,
The only question I have, the thing to add to this was, did you hear Eric Dickerson's remarks when they asked him about this record? They asked him, they said, how do you feel about Saquon? Like, are you okay with him breaking it? And I think traditionally everybody's like, oh yeah, it's for the love, whatever, records are meant to be broken. And Eric Dickerson's like, no, I don't want him to break it.
Why would you?
But it got some hand wringing because people are like, oh, come on. Like, why are you going to say that? And I'm like, why wouldn't you? Why would you want your record broken? Like, that's legit. Like, okay, after I die, go ahead and break it. But while I'm alive, I don't want you to break it. And I thought that was funny because there was some definite hand wringing across the NFL community of like, why is this old guy not wanting the young guy to break his record and all this stuff? But I was like, that's probably honestly the most honest answer I've ever heard of somebody like about to get their record broken. Because deep down inside, they sit at home and they're like, fuck this guy. He's not going to break my record. What is this bullshit? And saying the same things we are. He gets extra games and he's going to break my record? This motherfucker. So of course he doesn't want to, because not only does he have the rushing record, but he has the rushing record in fewer games. So his like yards per carry, like, games to accomplish. Yeah, that all matters to him. And so like I thought that was funny, but I also thought it was interesting that people were like calling out Dickerson for not wanting him to break it.
The other side to that, though, maybe Dickerson's being a little bit short-sighted here, because when's the last time people have talked about Eric Dickerson? And now he's in all the headlines. So maybe it's like, maybe it's kind of good for me that you got somebody.
Well, it's like the 71 Dolphins whenever a team's undefeated. It's like, let's talk about the 71 Dolphins. And then nobody's undefeated. And like, all right, we're all done with you guys again. Go back in your box.
Commanders. They take care of business in overtime versus the Falcons, 30-24. I mean, Jayden Daniels, like rookie of the year. Like, is that where we're? Is that a lock at this point? Like, the kid is amazing. 3 passing touchdowns, 127 yards rushing. He took care of business when it mattered the most. And I think he's won the rookie of the year. Like it sounds like
the only
in agreement there.
Logical argument that I've heard against that, which I think is ultimately stupid, because I think Jayden Daniels should win it, is Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers isn't a quarterback, so he doesn't get that much talk. But holy shit,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
That's a good point. That's actually a really good point. I think if he doesn't win it, he's definitely second. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes it tough. That's why they need to have quarterback specific awards, like the MVP. They should have like quarterback of the year award and then offensive player of the year, because I think just like this one, there should be like offense,
MVQ, most valuable quarterback.
Yeah, because these quarterbacks are very naturally quarterbacks in general are always going to they touch the ball the most. Like Brock Bowers is at the mercy of whoever the hell the
Brock
Raiders
Bowers
roll
has touched
out.
the ball a lot this year.
But think about that. Like the argument for him winning it is actually because look at who he's had throwing him the ball and what he's been able to do with it. Like,
how dare you disgrace Aiden O'Connell like that? Okay.
Yeah. Good for him. But so that's I like that. I like that, Scotty, because I think Bowers, and I know Slaps and I were talking about this last week, but like, Bowers is legit. Like that is a legit talent through and through.
Go rewind the tape and go listen to last week at all the records that I told you that Brock Bowers broke. Like, the kid is amazing, and I think he's. I mean, it's tough to say because he's. I think
the top three rookie of the year has got to be Daniels, Bowers, and Bo Nix.
Yep,
those have to be like your.
You think Daniels has eclipsed Bo Nix?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
because there was some back and forth there for a little bit.
I think so. I think a lot of it has to just to play down the stretch, where Daniels has like literally put this entire team on his back to win games.
He rushed for 127 yards in this game.
Yeah, that's unreal. That's unreal.
Okay. Y'all don't think Michael Penix should win Rookie of the Year? I mean,
the sample size is.
I mean, he went 19 for 35 for 223 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. I don't know. This one is really
My problem with this game was how they utilized Bijan Robinson. Like first half, they were feeding him. Second half, he got like nothing. And so, to me, that's a little wild because Penix isn't mobile anymore. He's had 2 ACL surgeries.
He's about the same age as Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, like he's not moving around. Like I think they should have fed. That's where they lost this game. If I'm a Falcons fan, I'm like, why were we not feeding our star running back? We just kind of neglected him in the second half.
I also Do
you like the switch?
That's the question that we should be talking about because obviously it was a big point of conversation, but the Falcons, they played the Giants when they made that switch and they won handily. But like this loss is absolutely fucking huge for the rest of the season for the Falcons. Like it makes all the difference in the world. And they decided to switch to the rookie quarterback with no NFL experience right at crunch time. And it's like, okay, maybe Penix is better than Kirk Cousins at this point, but like right now, does he really give them a better chance to win than with Kirk Cousins? And I don't know that that's clear. And it's just crazy to me that they decided to make the switch at this point in the season. Like
my vote is no. They shouldn't have. Like I genuinely, I don't understand why you would do that. You've rolled with Kirk Cousins all season long. Right. And Kirk Cousins has got you to this point where you're even in the playoff contention or he's been a part of that. Yes. Over the last couple of weeks before Kirk Cousins was benched, he did not look incredible. But they still got there. They were still, it wasn't like they were knocked out and they were just sitting there and they're like, all right, now let's roll out the rookie. Like, you were in playoff contention. And by the way, they still are in playoff contention. And just like you said, Scotty, they decided to roll Michael Penix out against the Giants, which, yeah, you beat the Giants. Congratulations. But it's like, why do it right now? And to me, I think that's a really poor move for the Falcons. Like, I don't think that was the right move here.
The whole organization has been schizophrenic ever since they picked up Kirk Cousins, because obviously, we've talked about the timeline, but it's still just worth talking about because, you pay Kirk Cousins on a 4-year deal, then you randomly draft Michael Penix in the draft, then you play Kirk Cousins all year long, you get to a point where you're potentially winning your division, going to the playoffs, and then you bench Kirk Cousins for a rookie, and you could tell he's a rookie when he's playing. Like, he looks like he's got talent. I think he's one of the better rookies in terms of being NFL ready that came out of this class. But still, like, you watch him overthrow some routes or not being on the same page as his receivers, and it's like Kirk Cousins probably wouldn't make those same mistakes. And, like, maybe he's not playing at the highest caliber, but at least you know that Kirk Cousins is going to give you a chance to, know what the routes are going to be or be on the same page with these receivers or not airmail easy passes. It's like that sort of stuff just has to infuriate Falcons fans knowing the position that they're in, and now they're like, okay, we got to deal with these rookie mistakes from Michael Penix, who barely has any playing time. It's just the whole thing.
Week 17 in the NFL, and we're sitting here talking about rookie mistakes, and it's like,
yeah,
it to me just seems
that was just a very
just
unserious
silly
move. Yeah, it was unserious. It was, the timing was weird. If and I get it because you're evaluating the play on the field, but it's like, it's almost too far gone. You almost like circle a date on the calendar if you're the coaching staff and be like, all right, if shit goes south, this is our fail date of like when we can make a switch. If it's past this point of no return, we're just letting it ride. And I mean,
but week 13 with playoff implications and you're still in the race, like that's a poor time.
Yeah, it is. And they did go to overtime. They had a chance to win this game. Their kicker, I know their kicker's hurt too, and they got a lot of things going on that team. And I don't think it's all Penix. I don't think Penix was necessarily the reason they lost.
No.
But I also don't know, because Kirk was giving away the football all the time. Yeah. So who knows? This could have been worse. We could have been looking at this game and like, why didn't you switch to Penix? Kirk's clearly been sucking for the last damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think the timing was just odd. I think you just got to let it ride. And I think that was our stance. Well, I think we kind of agreed on that. It was just kind of like, why this is weird.
Yeah. They set themselves up for this exact conversation, though, by operating the way that they did all season long. I mean, it was a crazy decision to sign Kirk Cousins off of an Achilles injury to a 4-year deal in the first place, and then to go draft Michael Penix. Like, and you knew that was going to create tension, because it's like, okay, the second Kirk Cousins looks old, they're going to talk about benching him, but then you're like, okay, now we're paying $1 billion for this quarterback that we're not playing, and they were still in contention. Like, it like you said, they should have said, like, okay, week 7, like, if we're still in contention, we're riding with Kirk Cousins. If we're getting our asses kicked, we'll make the switch. And if it's past that point, deal with it. Because now that you've changed, and if you miss the playoffs, you're going to circle this game and say, what the fuck are we doing playing a rookie quarterback in week 17?
I think the Falcons are just a terribly run organization.
Seems that way.
I mean, like, I've tried to make a lot of excuses. I really have. Like, Arthur Smith is a fucking moron, which, by the way, I still think he is a moron. But, like, the talent level that this team has versus, as soon as they signed Kirk Cousins last season, I was like, oh, the Falcons are going to win the division handily. Like, this was what they needed. And I've had this conversation before on the show, but, like, that was what I thought was going to be the differentiator. Is like, okay, they got Arthur Smith out of there so they can get a competent play caller. They got Kirk Cousins, who is the game script quarterback that they really needed here. Everything is looking great. You got Bajan, you got Drake London, like Darnell Mooney's in the mix now. Kyle Pitts, who's ass, by the way, Scotty.
Well, he looked pretty good. He looked pretty good.
Kyle Pitts is fucking dog water. Kyle Pitts is the worst tight end in the NFL.
Game script of this was just weird because, again, this is where I put this one on the coaches just overall, because Robinson had like 80-some yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half. They were up 17-7 at halftime. Yeah, they were up 17, and then they just totally abandoned the running game and let Daniels do his thing. Like, they didn't control the game at all. I think that's just I agree with the sentiment of not putting Penix in the spot, but that was not the reason why they lost.
No, and I don't think it was the reason either. I don't want to sit here and bash Penix.
But... And honestly, watching Penix play, it reminds you a little bit of Kirk Cousins, like at this stage in his career where he's less mobile than he was before the injuries in college. It sort of looked the same. And so that's why I don't know if it would have actually been better to have Kirk, but it's like that's a decision you just can't make at this point in time.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the playoff picture real quick. Then we'll do kickoff karaoke. Then we'll get the heck out of here. So, the playoff picture as it stands right now: the AFC, Chiefs, 1 seed; Bills,
Hell yeah,
2 seed. Then you got the Ravens, Steelers, Chargers, and the Texans are all in. The Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals are still in the hunt. What team amongst all these teams is the worst team that are in the hunt
right now?
Yeah.
I think given the injuries, or in the hunt, not all in. I was going to say overall.
Not all in the hunt.
In the hunt, the worst.
That means the Broncos, Dolphins, Bengals.
The Dolphins. I think the Dolphins have to be the worst.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
All
right, what is the worst team that is currently in between the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Steelers, Chargers, and Texans?
I think we're going to say the same thing. You want to say it on
What are you
three?
going to say?
All right, 3, 2, 1.
Texans.
Okay. And is it?
That's more injuries. That's more injuries
that's what I was
than
gonna
anything.
ask,
And Stroud looking really uncomfortable with that O-line. I think it's just they have a lot of things working against them right now. The team's too young to overcome veteran things happening to them. Like the Bills can overcome some injuries because they're got a little bit more veteran leadership. The Chiefs, the Ravens, those teams can do those things. I don't think the Texans are in that mode. They needed a full squad. They needed to keep everybody together. I think that Tank Dell injury was complete wind out of the sails for this team. They just haven't looked the same since that injury, and letting the Ravens just dance all over them in their own stadium, I think was kind of telling of where this team is heading right now, just with all the injuries.
Yeah, okay. It's really sad watching him play, honestly, because you just know the potential if this was a complete roster, and it's it doesn't look even close to the same.
No, it doesn't. Let's flip the script. What are the best teams that are currently in the hunt? So between the Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals, what's the best team here?
Best team top down, I would say, is the Broncos, even though the Broncos and Bengals just played. I think the Broncos just their defense. That defense is unreal. Yeah. And Bo Nix can do enough on offense to keep this team humming, especially as a rookie. I think, to me, the Broncos of those three would be the one I would least want to face in a playoff scenario, because everything gets tight in the playoffs, and defense is portable, and that Broncos defense is portable. Like the Bengals. Okay, everything gets tight. Like the Bengals offense cannot afford to make any mistakes. Dolphins not scared of it, and I think it would be the Broncos for me.
Yeah, I think it's obviously between the Broncos and the Bengals. I think I would be more scared to play the Bengals because that's an offense that could put up 60 on you. It just could. And obviously the defense is terrible and atrocious. Speaking from a Chiefs fan perspective, I don't know that necessarily means the Chiefs are going to put up points. That's scary. But I tend to agree that I think the Broncos, surprisingly, are pretty well-rounded for not having a ton of weapons. Obviously, the defense is very good. Not having a ton of weapons on offense, they've just been playing competent football. They just look competent on the field. And when you get into playoff time, competency is literally everything.
Okay. Between the teams that are in, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Steelers, Chargers, and Texans, I know you're both Chiefs fans, so you can say the Chiefs, but I'm going to ask you, what's the best team here? The number one best team. Obviously, the Chiefs have the first seed locked, so you could make the argument. But are you both in the mindset that the Chiefs are the best team here, or is there a different team that comes out in your mind as somebody who's better than the Chiefs at this moment?
Scotty, you going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll look at it this way. As a Chiefs fan, I'm scared of everybody, but also not really scared of anybody because I have faith that the Chiefs could win against any of these teams. With that said, it's really hard to say that the Bills aren't the most exciting team in the AFC right now. They are just, good enough on defense, and Josh Allen is a superhero, and their running game is really incredible. So, I'm kind of in a weird spot where if the Chiefs play the Bills, it wouldn't surprise anybody if either team won that game. Yeah. But I do think that the Chiefs and their playoff pedigree and their coaching staff, that does make a really big difference. And we've seen now, last year we went through the same thing where the Chiefs just kind of looked bad all season long. They lost games they shouldn't have lost. They had a tough road in the playoffs. And then playoff time comes around and you see experienced head coaching, a solid quarterback, and, just competent football and people not making stupid mistakes, save Jawan Taylor. And you see the success that it brings. So as a Chiefs fan, it's hard to say that you don't feel confident against every one of these teams.
Yeah, largely. Yeah, I agree. I would say the Bills, and I would have been more confident saying the Bills had the Jets game notwithstanding, but that Rams game and then that Patriots game where it was a defensive touchdown that really won it for them. It had nothing to do with, the offense doing what they normally do. That was interesting. It's kind of eyebrow raising where it's like, okay, our defense is starting to circle in, competent defenses starting to circle in on like where the Bills might be a little bit vulnerable. But I'm still going to say the Bills, but I think it is not as drastic as I maybe have thought like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yep. Okay. Let's go over to the NFC. The Vikings and the Lions are both fighting for the first seed. The Eagles have locked the second seed. And then the Packers, Rams, and Commanders are all in. So the teams that are in the hunt are the Bucs and the Falcons. So we'll start there. The Bucs, they clinch with a win over the Saints. So the Bucs and the Falcons who are in the hunt, what team's better here?
It's the same question we've been asking all year.
I know, and we're going to ask it again. Like, what team do you think is the better team?
Which is funny. I trust Baker.
Yeah,
I trust Baker more. Not like I trust him with my life, but I trust him more in this scenario.
Yeah, you remember at the beginning of the season when I said, "Oh, Baker Mayfield could do Baker Mayfield," and I was kind of making fun of people saying that. Well, I think Baker Mayfield could do it. I agree. I think
he could.
Well, and the Bucs offense is just. You with all the weapons that the Falcons have, we just haven't seen them put it together offensively to a point where people are scared of the offense. And the Bucs have shown that there are games when things start clicking, they can put up a shitload of points, and the defense is competent enough to keep games close. So to me, it's from what we've seen this season, especially considering Penix is going to be going into his 3rd ever NFL game. It's like you got to go with Baker Mayfield.
That's a tough argument to have here. Okay, the Vikings and the Lions are fighting for the first seed, and this is a little teaser for kickoff karaoke because we do have that game in the fold here. So the Vikings play at the Lions. The Lions are 2.5-point favorites. What team wins this game? What team locks the first seed? I'll start with you as somebody who has now top of the ladder, Alan. Who are you taking here in this game?
I'm going to take the Vikings. I think. The end of the season is where I think you're going to really start seeing the Lions injury play up, and I think this is going to be one of those tests against like a really solid Vikings team. This is a divisional game, so you never know. Like these things could shake out either way. But I like the Vikings to win. I like the Vikings to take the 1 seed, which is wild because the hell of a year for the Lions. Just be pissed off if I'm a fan in this division through and through because you're just like. Damn it, literally any other year, this is a runaway. We got this, all good. We're already resting our starters. And then, of course, it's one of our division rivals that's right there with us. So super frustrating if you're a fan of one of these teams because it should all be wrapped up. But exciting for us as fans coming down the stretch. But I think the Vikings win.
Scotty?
If the Lions were healthy, I would choose the Lions hands down. Because I do think the Lions roster, top to bottom, when everybody's healthy, is the best roster in the NFL. They are just complete everywhere. They have stars everywhere. But the injuries make a big difference, and that makes me very nervous. I think I'm still going to go with the Lions because of home field advantage. But obviously, this is a game that would not surprise you either way. I mean, no matter what happens in this game, even if it's a blowout one side or the other, you're not really going to be surprised just because of how talented these teams both are. So I think I'm going to go with the Lions. That's only bit me in the ass one time in kickoff karaoke all year, so I'm hoping that we can kind of right the ship, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay. I'm going to take the Vikings here. I think that no, I have to. I am.
You're going to have to go
I'm filling
first
this
on
out.
a couple of these.
I'm filling this out, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're still talking about the NFC, so I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here. But I am going to take the Vikings. A, because I have to, but B, for what you just mentioned, Scotty, I do think the injuries for the Lions are going to be the differentiator here, and I think the Vikings are going to win this game. But talking about the NFC, so the Packers, Rams, and the Commanders are all in, right? And so for the teams that are in, we'll have the Vikings, Lions, Eagles, Packers, Rams, and Commanders. Who's the worst team in this group?
It's got to be the Rams.
To me, yeah, I was going to say either Rams or Commanders, and I would probably lean Commanders just because of how up and down they've been.
I would.
And again, I trust McVay more, and I trust Stafford more. So I would say Commanders. And worst is like, obviously, they're in the playoffs, so they're a good team. But they're the team
someone's got to be the worst of the
last.
best. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep. You agree with that, Scotty? Commanders?
I think I would say the Rams.
Okay.
The Commanders just have so much juice. And it's granted it's kind of just like a feeling or an aura sort of situation going on here. But you look at the Commanders and, they're talking about playoffs with a rookie quarterback. Obviously, that doesn't go well very often. But I look at the Commanders and I just see momentum. And with the Rams, it's like it's just been a fight, a constant struggle. And they've persevered and got to this point, and that's really great. And they're still a very, very good team. But I think I would have to put the Rams below the Commanders just because of the lack of sort of the momentum that we see with Washington.
Okay. Yeah, I think the Commanders and Rams are definitely the two standouts as the worst, which sucks for the NFC. Like the Vikings, Lions, and Packers, just like you mentioned, all in one freaking division. It's like, God, spread the love a little bit. And I'm not talking about Jordan. I'm talking about putting these teams in different damn divisions here because they're all dominant teams. Like they're all very, very good teams. So it kind of sucks that they're all in the same division, but it's also kind of fun. My heart goes out to Lions fans mainly because they're finally good for the first time in a really long time. And it's like, well, the Vikings are still really good and the Packers are still really good. So it's got to be infuriating for them. But I want to go over just briefly, talk about the current draft standings. And this is slated to potentially change here, but I've got the first 6 picks currently of the upcoming NFL draft here and what teams have those picks. So there's still 1 week of football left, gentlemen, and we're starting to get a pretty good understanding of what this could look like. So the first overall pick at this current juncture is the Patriots. And I bring this up because NFL talking head Nick Wright came out yesterday saying that he thinks that the Patriots should, quote, trade Drake May, draft Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter using the draft capital that they would get for Drake May, and then hire Deion Sanders as the head coach for the Patriots. What do you think, guys?
I think Nick Wright is really good at making people mad on Twitter, so he's just doing his thing.
I would agree with that.
I think so too.
Obviously,
this is the
stupidest thing.
Very stupid.
This is a bit.
If the Patriots do anything but anoint Drake May the savior of New England, then they're idiots. So they
Drake May looks good.
He looks.
Do you think
good.
Gerard Mayo is the answer?
That's a more interesting question.
That I don't know, but I don't think Deion is either.
I agree with that.
Deion's insane.
I would say you got to let this go. I think that there's a lot of things to like about the Patriots. I think this draft pick is going to be crucial, but I don't think trading Drake May to draft Shedeur and doing all this stuff. I don't think.
I mean, the Patriots are slated. I mean, you look at this. There are going to be teams that are going to be very, very interested in climbing up the ladder to take the first overall pick. And you look at the rest of these picks here. So number 2, you have the Titans. Number 3, you have the Browns. Number 4, you have the Giants. And all 3 of those teams need quarterbacks, right? They're going to be, and the Patriots don't because they have Drake May. So they're basically going to say, okay, we'll move down 3 spots. We'll move down 2 spots and we're going to get a haul for it. So you can get the quarterback that you want. So all 3 of those teams need it, and then the Jags and the Panthers at 5 and 6, and obviously they don't need quarterbacks at this juncture, so they'll probably just chill. And like I said, this is slated to change. I think it is worth noting that the Giants pretty much had the first overall pick locked until Drew Lock decided to throw 5 touchdowns against the Colts this last week. Absolutely hysterical. I think that was the biggest FU that Drew Lock could have given to that Giants franchise because Drew Lock, if people do not know, he was a backup quarterback for the Seahawks and left the Seahawks to come over to the Giants because the Giants told him that the quarterback room was not a lock to start the season. So it was not guaranteed that Drew Lock was going to be, or not Drew Lock, Danny Dimes was going to be the starting quarterback is what they told Drew Lock. Drew Lock comes over there. Drew Lock is the 3rd string quarterback behind not only Danny Dimes, but Tommy Cutlets. And so Drew Lock gets his start and throws the Giants out of the number 1 seed, number 1 pick, which I think is absolutely hilarious. That's the most Giants thing that could happen to the Giants.
It is very funny. I have an interesting question for you, and I don't know my answer to this. The future with Deshaun Watson seems very confusing to me.
Yes.
Would the Browns even draft a quarterback? Say the Browns ended up with the 1 seed. Would they pick Travis Hunter?
They restructured Deshaun's contract. So they got some relief.
I think I think they're very interested in drafting a quarterback. Let me ask you this. If you were the Browns head coach, if you were Kevin Stefanski or the Browns front office, and you had the 3rd overall pick in the draft, how how could you not look at drafting a quarterback? Because you've seen what Deshaun Watson is not, and that's a good quarterback. Like, he's played like ass.
I think something to consider too, and this might be difficult for a lot of like NFL fans or people like NFL GMs and executives that have been around for a long time, is like, I think there's like a philosophical shift in the NFL of like what is possible. And I think traditional wisdom says we have to draft and develop a quarterback that can get this done for us. And I think there's multiple ways to do it. We just saw Joe Flacco take this same Browns team and look dangerous in the playoffs. And I don't think you have to go out and like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We got to go draft this guy and that guy. And like, we have to build and we're at the top, so we have to take a quarterback. I think there's multiple ways. to do it. And there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks available that you could make it work. I think you got to nail the coaching, right? Like, you have to have the right coach in there to like, to scheme up and get a quarterback in position to do what they need to do. But I think there's enough quarterback turn, like there's enough quarterbacks that are capable of doing the job in the NFL. And I think if you're the Browns, I think obviously the Deshaun thing, I think they should have just moved on, admitted fault, and just said goodbye, and let's go ahead and regroup. But for here, I think there's a lot of interesting prospects. I think, there's a lot of wide receiver prospects. I think Travis Hunter's interesting. I think you just got to draft the best available. I don't think it has to be.
So you wouldn't draft a quarterback here?
Depends on what's available, but I think outside of Shedeur, I'm not really like Cam Ward for Miami. I think as good as he is, he has a lot of things that are like red flags for me if I'm evaluating quarterbacks.
And even Shedeur, so, like we talk about Shedeur like he's like the clear number one quarterback, but this guy has played his entire time with Colorado has been played without an offensive line. So we have really no idea what the fuck this guy looks like in a competent offense where he's got to sit in the pocket and make decisions and not just run around and scramble for his life. Yeah. I mean, he looks a lot sort of like Caleb Williams did when he was in college, where it's like, we don't know how that's going to translate to an NFL style system. And so even Shedeur, who seems to be just the runaway number one quarterback, is like still a huge question mark in this draft class.
Well, while we're talking about Shedeur, did you guys see that he had Giants cleats as pretty much a lock that he was going to go to the Giants, and then the Giants don't have the first overall pick anymore?
Yeah, that's a tough look. He also played like a Giants quarterback in that bowl game, so it's quite ironic.
It was pretty ironic. All right, let's do kickoff karaoke. So obviously we already talked about the Lions and the Vikings, but I'll give the standings here very quickly. Alan, you're at the top of the rung at 39. Scotty is at 36, and I am down here at the bottom at 33. So currently, I am going to be singing the national anthem live over on X before the Super Bowl, unless I can pull out a mile-high miracle here and be out Scotty. We've already decided the Vikings and the Lions. Scotty, you took the Lions, and Alan and I took the Vikings, so I will one-up you there. And we'll go to the games this week. We have the Panthers at the Falcons, we have the Commanders at the Cowboys, and we have the 49ers at the Cardinals. We'll start with the Panthers at the Falcons. So the Falcons are 8-point favorites. Scotty, because Alan went first for the Lions and the Vikings, with you in the number 2 position, you will go first here. What are you taking?
Yeah, this one's really interesting. This is another one where you wouldn't be surprised either way. I mean, I think if the Panthers won outright, you would be a little surprised, but you would not be surprised if this is a 3-point game. I mean, with how the Falcons are playing right now. I'm going to go with the Falcons. I think being at home, I think they maybe hopefully learned from their mistake of not feeding Bijan for 4 quarters, and you can see an offense that can put up a few points. And obviously, Bryce Young's been playing well. This Panthers team looks rejuvenated, but I still think we're looking at them. We're grading them on a curve a little bit. We're starting to say, hey, these guys, they can compete with people, but they've pretty much lost every game since we've been talking highly of Bryce Young still. So I think that they're in a good spot, but I still think the Falcons are the better team. I think they should win this game handily, and I guess we'll see.
Okay. I'm going to take the Panthers. Notwithstanding that I'm going first. We have done the same order every year or every game.
Here's the thing, Hunter. I've gone first for 2 of the 4 games before you. I mean, so now you got to go before me for 2 of the 4 games.
No.
What do you mean no?
It goes. We go top down every single time.
I am mathematically guaranteed.
Yeah, you're fine, Alan.
So I'm good. I'm good to go. This is just between you two now.
And I'm not saying that, I mean, yes, there is some sway in there because you took the Falcons. However, I do genuinely think the Panthers, even if the Falcons win this game, an 8-point spread here, and the way the Panthers have been playing, like that's. I'm taking the Panthers. I would have taken the Panthers regardless of if you would have or not. I do think the Panthers are going to cover this, regardless if they win or not. An 8-point swing in the way that the Panthers have been playing. Now, would I be surprised if the Falcons won this game by more than 8 points? No, but I do think the Panthers have been playing really, really good ball. Bryce Young looks really competent, and for them, even if they lose, I think there is a pretty good chance they could cover that 8-point swing here. So I genuinely do think the Panthers could cover here. And now we're going to go to the Commanders at the Cowboys. The Commanders are 3-point favorites. I am going because I'm in the third position, and Alan went first. Scotty goes second. I go third as the guy at the bottom of the rung here. And I'm going to take the Commanders. I think that the Cowboys are ass. I think their season's over. I think Jerry Jones is a wow, Scotty. That was really quick to type Commanders on the docket.
He's mathematically push you out.
I'm not going to be able to do that.
He's not going to be able to do it because you're going to go, and then he's going to go, and then I'm going to go on this last game.
That's true.
Hunter has completely fucked up the order.
That has been what we have done the entire season.
Yeah, but we did the last game first, and then you made me go before you. It's not working out.
This is fine.
It would have worked out this way either way.
I don't think so.
Alan went first, you go, I go, and then
this is great. I really
anyway. It looks like we're all taking the Commanders here. Is there any analysis that needs to be done here?
No.
I think it is the Commanders.
Cowboys.
I mean, they're 3-point favorites.
They could win, but the Cowboys suck.
Cowboys suck.
I don't want them to win. Screw you, Jerry.
Me either.
All right, last game. 49ers at the Cardinals. What a freaking last game to end on. A gut-wrenching, heart-destroying game for myself. The 49ers are 1-point favorites. Allen, as the reigning champion, who are you taking?
49ers, Cardinals, wind out of their sails, nothing left to play for, lost on a heartbreaking game. It's tough to come back from that and then pick yourself up off the mat and be like, let's play. 49ers, largely, I know they're out, but not because of incompetence.
1 point. Injuries. Like that's saying Vegas doesn't
it's a pick 'em.
Feel.
Yeah, I like the 49ers here. I think their coaching staff will go out with a bang.
Okay. Scotty.
This is interesting.
This gets really interesting.
What is Allen as the nonpartisan third party here? What's the funnier scenario? Hunter having to sing kickoff karaoke because let me rephrase. Hunter having to sing kickoff karaoke because he rooted against his own team, or Hunter having to sing kickoff karaoke because he was rooting for his team and they let him down yet again.
Let him down. I know this is a lose-lose for me.
It very well may be that I sing kickoff karaoke, but if this plays out this way,
let's see this real quick. Let's see this really quick because when do these games actually happen? Because is this like actually schedule-wise the last game? No, it's not. It's going to come down to that Vikings-Lions game if it's down to the wire. So it's going to come down to that game.
Dude, that's even crazier because Scotty is. Yeah, Scotty.
I might put all his eggs in Dan Campbell jersey, retro Dan Campbell.
That's actually funnier now because if it comes down to it, and all these games shake out that way, it's really going to come down to you having to root for Dan Campbell.
And it even sucks worse because that game is the biggest toss-up of all the games. I have no idea what's going to happen.
I mean, you still have to have a lot of things go wrong for you. Like I have to win both these other games.
I played fantasy football this year. I know how quickly things can go wrong for me.
Touche. All right. Well, Scotty, who are you taking? 49ers or 1-point favorites? Who are you taking, the 49ers or the Commanders?
Well, Alan didn't answer me, though.
Cardinals.
What would be funnier?
Well, because it's not going to come down to that. It's kind of irrelevant. But I think it is funnier if he has to root against his team.
That's cruel, but funny.
Whenever you have to root against your team to get out of doing something, that always is the worst.
I don't care. I'm going 49ers. I believe in Shanahan. I believe in Brock Purdy. Kyler Murray is schizophrenic. I don't know.
Roll cards, baby.
Yeah, I want you to be able to root for your team like you did at the beginning of the season, like all gung ho.
Well, this is this. Now I actually care about this game, aside from just being whatever. Like I thank you. Genuinely, I appreciate that. That's a good Christmas present for me. Thank you so much for
the Panthers.
Making me care about it.
So we really have to pay attention to the Panthers-Falcons game because that's a noon on Sunday.
This is
that game is going to carry us because if that game happens, then it comes down to the
Then it comes down to the 49ers Cardinals. And then
if that one happens, then we're all in on Vikings Lions to see if
so fucking stressed out, bro.
This week of football is going to be insane, and I can't wait for it. All right. Appreciate you, boys. All you dirty old nasty brainiacs that have made it thus far, thank you so much for tuning in. Hit the subscribe button wherever you might be tuning in at. If you're over on X, go check us out. Hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube. Do all the things because we genuinely do appreciate it. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is go check out LeatherBrainz.com. We have a group of writers over there that are putting out content almost daily. It's good stuff. It's all 100% free. Go check it out. And then fantasy football, it's over. So, but for you dynasty players, go listen to our fantasy football podcast that we have with the other group of LeatherBrainz guys over at Fantasy Brains on Thursdays. And that's it. Let's get the hell out of here, gentlemen. I love you guys. We are out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out LeatherBrainz.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.